Even in a coop where nothing has ever gotten in, your chicken still runs the exact same elaborate survival ritual her wild ancestors needed just to live until morning, every single night, whether the danger is real or not. There's an ancient, fixed sequence playing out in your backyard every evening, one most keepers watch without ever realizing what it actually is or why it can't simply be skipped. If you think that nightly pacing and climbing is just her getting comfortable, wait until you see why cutting it short can backfire and what it means when the whole routine starts to look different. So what is she actually doing during those 15 or 20 minutes before she finally settles? Why can interrupting that routine, even with the best intentions, end up costing you more than it seems? And what does it really mean when that nightly ritual itself starts to change? Every night before dark, does your chicken do something that seems strange, almost ritualistic, right before she settles in to roost? Yes, it looks like habit, but behind that nightly pattern, there's something most backyard keepers completely overlook. It's one of the most ancient survival behaviors a chicken still carries, performed in full every single evening, whether she needs it or not. And if you've been watching it without understanding it, which most people do, you've been witnessing a piece of behavioral history play out in your own backyard. Let's start with what that strange nightly routine really is. 1. It was never just settling down. Most people assume it's simple. The sun goes down, the chicken gets tired, she finds a spot and goes to sleep. But here's the thing, if it were that simple, every hen would simply stop wherever she happened to be standing when darkness fell and close her eyes. They don't. Instead, in the final stretch of daylight, something shifts. Movement becomes purposeful. Pacing increases. Vocalizations change. She inspects, repositions, climbs, descends, and climbs again, sometimes for 15 or 20 minutes before finally settling. That sequence is not random fidgeting. It's a fixed action pattern, a term in animal behavior science for an instinctive sequence of behaviors triggered by a specific stimulus and carried through to completion almost automatically, regardless of whether the original need still exists. The stimulus here is falling light. The completed pattern is roosting behavior, inherited directly from wild jungle fowl ancestors who depended on getting this sequence right every single night to survive until morning. Research in poultry ethology has documented that pre-roosting behavior in domestic chickens follows a highly conserved pattern across breeds and environments, suggesting it is deeply hardwired rather than learned individually. Your hen isn't deciding what to do each evening. She's running a program written long before she hatched. And by the way, if that routine suddenly changes, gets rushed, or stops happening the way it normally does, don't dismiss it as nothing. We'll cover exactly what that shift can mean before the end. 2. The height seeking is about something specific. Have you noticed your hen climbing to the highest available point before settling, even when there's a perfectly comfortable spot lower down? That preference isn't comfort seeking, it's predator math. Here's what most people don't realize. Ground level sleeping for a wild jungle fowl meant exposure to nearly every terrestrial predator capable of reaching her during the most vulnerable hours of her existence. Elevation changes that equation dramatically. A bird roosting several feet off the ground is inaccessible to most ground predators, harder to surprise, and positioned with at least a few extra seconds of reaction time if something approaches. Research into the evolutionary origins of domestic chicken behavior has traced roosting height preference directly to red jungle fowl, the wild ancestor of all domestic chickens, which roosts in trees specifically to avoid nocturnal ground predators. That instinct never left. Modern hens in a predator-free backyard will still consistently choose the highest available roosting bar over a lower one, even when no threat has ever materialized in that space. The choice isn't informed by her actual risk. It's informed by millions of years of ancestors who didn't survive when they chose otherwise. When you watch your hen bypass a lower perch for a higher one every single evening, you're watching a decision made on behalf of birds that lived thousands of generations before her. 3. The repositioning is a safety audit. Does your hen seem to shuffle, adjust, and resettle multiple times after she's already chosen her spot for the night? That fidgeting has a function, even though it looks inefficient. Chickens performing this repositioning behavior are running what behaviorists describe as an assessment sequence, a final check of the immediate environment before committing to several hours of reduced vigilance. During active daylight hours, a hen can react instantly to a changing situation. Once she's settled for the night, her ability to respond to threats drops substantially. That trade-off makes the final pre-roost assessment disproportionately important. Studies of avian sleep behavior have found that birds engage in measurably more vigilant, exploratory behavior in the minutes immediately preceding sleep onset compared to other points in their active day. A pattern interpreted as a final risk evaluation before entering a vulnerable state. Your hen's repeated shuffling, repositioning, and brief departures from a spot she just chose are her confirming, multiple times, that the location is as safe as it appeared on first inspection. Only after that audit is satisfied does she fully commit. 4. The specific vocalizations carry the flock home. Have you noticed a particular sound your hen makes during this pre-roost window, different from her daytime calls? That sound has a job. Chickens use a distinct set of vocalizations specifically associated with the transition to roosting, often described by researchers as low, repetitive contact calls that increase in frequency as light fades. These calls serve a coordination function, helping scattered flock members locate each other and consolidate into the group's chosen roosting area before full darkness eliminates visual contact as an option. Research led by Dr. Christine Nickel, a prominent figure in poultry behavior and welfare science, has documented that flock synchronization around roosting time is one of the more socially coordinated behaviors chickens display, with hens actively vocalizing to draw other members toward a shared roosting location, rather than each bird independently finding its own spot. When your hen calls out during this window, she may be doing more than expressing her own state. She may be actively herding her flock towards safety, the way a vocal coordinator would in any social species facing a shared nightly risk. This is also why a hen separated from her flock at dusk often becomes noticeably more vocal and agitated than at any other point in the day. The call isn't just about her, it's about closing the gap before dark closes the option. 5. Why she goes through this, even with a predator-proof coop. If your coop is fully secure, with no realistic predator access, why does she still perform this entire elaborate sequence every night? This is the question most keepers eventually ask, and the answer says something important about how instinct actually works. Behavioral instincts in animals do not require an active threat to trigger. They require the stimulus the instinct evolved to respond to, in this case falling light, regardless of whether the original danger that shaped the behavior is present. This is a well-established principle in ethology, the science of animal behavior. An instinct fires based on the trigger it's wired to, not based on a real-time risk assessment of the current environment. Research on captive and domesticated animals across species has consistently found that instinctive behavioral sequences persist essentially unchanged, even in environments where the original selective pressure has been completely removed for many generations. Your hen's coop may be impenetrable. Predators may have never once gotten near her. None of that matters to the part of her brain running this nightly sequence. The behavior runs because the trigger is present. Full stop. Safety doesn't override instinct. It just makes the instinct unnecessary, not absent. And if this is changing how you watch that evening routine, hit that like and subscribe. It helps us reach more keepers who want to understand the instinctive behavior happening right in their own backyard. 6. Disruptions to this routine carry real cost. Have you ever interrupted your hen's pre-roost sequence, bringing her in late, moving her coop setup, or introducing something new right around dusk, and noticed she seemed unusually agitated afterward? That reaction isn't an overreaction on her part. Because this sequence is a fixed action pattern, interrupting it partway through doesn't simply pause it. In many documented cases across animal behavior research, an interrupted fixed action pattern causes measurable stress, sometimes prompting the animal to restart the sequence from the beginning once a disruption clears, even if that means a significantly delayed bedtime. The pattern isn't optional scaffolding around the real behavior. For the chicken's nervous system, completing the sequence is the real behavior. This is part of why changes to co-op setup, sudden additions of new roosting bars, introduction of new flock members, or even just a later than usual evening routine on your part can produce a flock that seems unsettled, noisier, and slower to actually go to sleep on the nights when that change happens. You're not imagining the disruption. You're watching an interrupted instinctive sequence trying to find its way back to completion. 7. When the routine itself becomes the warning sign. So what does it mean when this nightly pattern changes in a more lasting way? Not just one disrupted evening, but a consistent shift over several nights. This is what I mentioned at the beginning, and it's the part most keepers don't think to watch for until something's already gone wrong. A hen who suddenly struggles to find her usual spot, who seems confused or disoriented during a routine she's performed flawlessly for months, or who stops climbing to her usual height and settles low instead, is showing you something beyond a passing off night. Sometimes that shift points toward a physical issue. Vision changes, joint pain that makes climbing difficult, or general illness can all disrupt a sequence this physically demanding. A hen who used to fly confidently to a high roost and now hesitates, attempts and fails, or avoids the climb altogether is worth a closer look, particularly for leg or foot injuries that wouldn't necessarily be visible during daytime observation. Other times the shift is environmental. A new predator pressure near the coop, even one your hen has only sensed and you haven't seen, can cause a flock to abandon a previously preferred roosting spot in favor of one that feels more defensible. Hens are often picking up on cues, scent, sound, movement at the tree line that you have no access to. A sudden flock-wide change in roosting preference is sometimes the earliest available warning that something has shifted in the safety of that location, well before any other evidence appears. That nightly ritual you've been watching, the pacing, the climbing, the resettling, the calling, isn't background behavior to tune out. It's one of the oldest, most consistently expressed instincts your hen carries, performed in full detail every evening of her life. When it runs smoothly, it's simply her nature playing out. When it changes, it's rarely about nothing. Watch it tonight with that in mind. You'll see it differently.